Welcome back. The Indian troops have martyred 2 more civilians in northern Hindwara region of occupied Kashmir. The occupation forces targeted youths during a cordon and search operation ongoing since yesterday. The forces have martyred 14 Kashmiris over the past 10 days in different districts of the valley. The occupied valley is reeling under New Delhi's crushing curfew and communications blackout for the past 272 days. Pakistan has rejected Indian allegations of infiltration attempts and claims that New Delhi targeted launching pads across the LOC. Islamabad has also called for the UN military observer group in India and Pakistan to play its mandated role. In a statement, Foreign Office said, such allegations are aimed at diverting the world's attention from India's state terrorism in occupied Kashmir. It said India is using these allegations as a pretext for launching false flag operation and targeting civilians. It said Pakistan has taken neutral observers and human rights organizations to LOC on several occasions in the past to expose India's claims. The Foreign Office said New Delhi has restricted the UN military observer group from visiting occupied Kashmir and the LOC. It said Pakistan has imposed no such restrictions on the observer group. Pakistan's COVID-19 death toll has jumped to 440 after the country recorded 23 deaths in the last 24 hours. The Health Ministry said nearly 1,000 new confirmed cases have risen the total to over 19,000. The ministry said more than 4,800 patients of coronavirus have recovered so far, while 147 remain critical. It said Punjab and Sindh provinces have the highest number of cases, with over 7,000 each. The ministry said more than 203,000 tests have been conducted countrywide, with over 8,700 taken since yesterday. Meanwhile, Prime Minister Imran Khan has launched a cash assistance program for those who lost jobs due to the COVID-19. In a briefing, he said the amount collected under Corona Relief Fund will be spent in a transparent manner and details will be shared with the public. Over 1,600 more people have died in the US from the new coronavirus as many states continue to protest against stay-at-home orders. The global death toll from the disease has crossed 243,000 with over 3.4 million people infected. More in this report.
Lifting of stringent rules across US signals a new phase in country's response to the coronavirus. It came even as confirmed cases nationally continue to grow. New York Governor Andrew Cuomo has pushed back against what he called premature demands to reopen the state, but he conceded there has been a small drop in the number of new COVID-19 cases.
That number was going like this. That's why all the projections were wrong. New Yorkers grabbed it, pulled it down. They changed that curve because they stayed at home, they closed, they wore masks, etc.
With Spain gradually relaxing its tough lockdown, masks have been made compulsory on public transport in the country. France has extended state of emergency till June 24th and made quarantine and isolation compulsory for visitors.
À vivre avec le virus.
The next few weeks and months will be about learning how to live with the virus. That is what the draft law presented during the Council of Ministers by the Prime Minister meeting today is preparing. This bill extends the state of emergency until July 23rd because it is of absolute necessity. It is the guarantee that we will be fully able to react quickly and efficiently to the evolution of the health situation.
Vite et efficacement.
But Australia's state of Victoria recorded its highest increase in COVID-19 cases in weeks as part of the country began easing distancing rules. Meanwhile, China has reported only 2 new coronavirus cases, of which one is imported and the other is local. No deaths have been reported in the mainland for over 2 weeks now.
In another news, the Indian government has booked Delhi Minorities Commission Chairman Zafarul Islam Khan with sedition charges. Delhi police have registered an FIR against Khan, allegedly for promoting enmity between different religious groups. The government said Khan has been charged for making a provocative comment to cause disharmony and create a rift in society. Earlier in a tweet, Khan thanked Kuwait for supporting Indian Muslims against Islamophobia. The commission chairman said Hindutva extremists will not care about the persecution of Muslims in India. He said Indian Muslims have not yet officially complained to the Muslim world. If this happens, radicals will face an avalanche. Khan says he stands by his words and will not delete his message on Twitter. 3 more Indian nationals have been charged in the UAE over Islamophobic posts on social media. The suspects join nearly half a dozen hate-mongers who have similarly landed in trouble in recent weeks. The latest addition to the growing list includes a chef, a storekeeper, and a cash custodian. Both the former and current Indian ambassadors have cautioned their countrymen about UAE's strict hate speech laws. Similar warnings were issued by missions in other GCC countries. The UAE outlaws all religious or racial discrimination under a legislation passed in 2015. The Taliban say the US must honor its obligations under Doha peace deal. In a statement, spokesperson Zabiullah Mujahid said the path to a resolution in Afghanistan lies in the implementation of the agreement. Zabiullah said Washington must not harm the current environment with pointless and provocative statements. This comes after US forces in Afghanistan said they will respond if the Taliban continue to increase attacks. In a Twitter post, spokesperson Sonny Leggett said US forces want the peace process to move forward. He said reducing violence is an absolute necessity and is up to the leaders of all military forces, including Afghan forces, the Taliban, and the coalition. The Afghan government says it has released 98 more Taliban prisoners as part of its efforts towards peace and battling COVID-19. In a tweet, National Security Council spokesperson Javed Faisal said inmates were freed based on their age, health, and length of remaining sentence. The spokesperson said the step is being taken under President Ashraf Ghani's order to comply with the Doha peace deal. The Kabul administration earlier released 300 Taliban prisoners to pave the way for intra-Afghan talks. Meanwhile, the Taliban have released 100 Afghan soldiers and officials to fulfill their end of the bargain. The prisoner swap was the first step scheduled to be taken between the Taliban and the Kabul under the Doha deal. Iran's Foreign Minister Javad Zarif has accused the United States of pouring weapons all over the world. The statement comes after Secretary of State Mike Pompeo said the U.S. will work with the UN Security Council to extend the embargo on Iran. In a statement, Zarif said the U.S. is the top of the list of conflict profiteer and war initiator and instigator. The Iranian foreign minister said the U.S. is world's top military spender and arms seller. He said despite all these facts, Pompeo is apparently so worried about Iran, which was a huge U.S. arms customer till 1979. The weapon sanctions on Iran are set to end in October this year under the 2015 nuclear deal. Seoul says North Korean troops have fired multiple shots towards South Korean guard post inside the demilitarized zone. In a statement, Joint Chiefs of Staff said South Korea responded by firing 2 shots, but no injuries were reported. But later, Seoul said the gunshots fired by Pyongyang's forces were not intentional. The exchange of gunfire follows the reappearance a day earlier of North Korean leader Kim Jong-un after a near 3-week absence. The tense 155-mile border between North and South Korea is one of the most militarized areas in the world. Over the years, the two militaries have occasionally exchanged gunfire. In Libya, the Military Council of southwestern Mosul City has announced its support for the UN-backed government of national accord. In a statement, the council rejected any coup attempt against the legitimacy represented by the Libyan government. The council also congratulated GNA over recent military gains in western Libya by Operation Volcano of Rage. It warned Haftar forces against aggression and destroying the stability in the country. Meanwhile, the government said Haftar's forces have killed 2 civilians in rocket attacks on Tripoli. Turkish security forces say they have killed 5 terrorists of the Kurdistan Workers' Party. The officials said 3 others surrendered to the forces. In a statement, the Interior Ministry said the terrorists belonged to the Syrian branch of PKK. It said the terrorists surrendered after the efforts of police and National Intelligence Organization. The ministry said that the number of surrendered terrorists has risen to 75 since the start of 2020. Earlier, the security forces killed 2 terrorists in Gara region of northern Iraq. The PKK terrorists often use northern Iraq to plan cross-border terrorist attacks in Turkey. Fighting on the Yemeni island of Socotra has come to a halt after an agreement was reached. A truce was signed between the Saudi-backed government and UAE-backed southern separatists. The de-escalation agreement comes after an armed unit of the Southern Transitional Council fought to wrest control of the provincial capital. The agreement prohibits any military vehicle or heavy weapon from leaving the island. It also calls for the coalition and government forces to secure the town and the local facilities. Earlier this week, the STC declared self-rule and a state of emergency in parts of the country's south under its control. Saudi Arabia has pledged medical supplies worth more than $2.5 million to Palestine in the fight against coronavirus. State media said the supplies will be donated through King Salman Humanitarian Aid and Relief Center. The supplies include medical equipment from Europe, China, and the kingdom itself. The aid comes as the country has repeatedly emphasized the importance of cooperation against the pandemic. Meanwhile, Saudi Arabia has confirmed more than 1,300 new coronavirus cases over the past 24 hours, raising the total to over 25,000. A health ministry spokesperson also confirmed 7 more deaths, raising the death toll to 176. Israel's Supreme Court has begun a 2-day hearing to determine whether Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu will be allowed to form a new government. In a rare move, an expanded panel of 11 justices hears the arguments, and the session is aired live due to its significance. Netanyahu and Gantz signed an agreement last month to form a unity government. The petition requests the court to nullify the deal and bar Netanyahu from leading the government, citing criminal proceedings against him. Netanyahu's corruption trial is due to start on May 24th, after he was formally charged for bribery, fraud, and breach of trust in January. Meanwhile, hundreds of people protested against the coalition deal in Tel Aviv as they opposed keeping Netanyahu in power after corruption charges. If the court strikes down the coalition deal, it can lead Israel to a 4th consecutive election in just over 12 months. We're taking a short break, but stay tuned for more news. Welcome back. The US State Department has voiced support for hundreds of Rohingya stuck in the Bay of Bengal. In a tweet, senior US diplomat Alice Wells said the refugees are in a desperate condition and need immediate assistance. Wells urged the regional states to offer safe disembarkation and reaffirm their commitments to maritime search and rescue. Meanwhile, a small boat carrying 43 Rohingya people landed on the coast of southern Bangladesh. Hundreds of Rohingya are stranded on at least 2 trawlers between Bangladesh and Malaysia. Rights groups say Southeast Asian governments have tightened borders to keep out the new coronavirus. The UN has urged authorities to let the boats land. For years, Rohingya from Myanmar have fled by boat for Thailand and Malaysia when the seas are calm between October and April. In Venezuela, the death toll of the prison riot in the western state of Portuguesa has risen to 46. The National Guard said soldiers opened fire at armed prisoners trying to break out of the Los Llanos jail. In a statement, the Venezuelan Observatory of Prisons director said 46 bodies had been identified after the incident. He said 60 inmates were wounded in the incident. Opposition lawmaker Maria Beatriz Martinez said the riot erupted after a ban on family members from bringing inmates food during visits. The restrictions were imposed as part of the country's effort to prevent the spread of the coronavirus in its prisons. Over 1,800 families have become homeless in western Kenya after the river Nigeria burst its banks. Local media says 116 people have died due to the rains and flooding across 29 counties so far. Kenya's Red Cross said locals have carried their belongings away from submerged houses on boats and motorbikes. Meanwhile, a water bus carrying 20 people also capsized in the Usangi region in western Kenya due to strong winds caused by storms and rains. Police said speedboats responded to a distress call from the lake region and managed to save all of the passengers. Kenya is in its rainy season, which lasts from March to May. Journalists around the world are observing World Press Freedom Day today under the theme Journalism Without Fear or Favor. National and local celebrations for the day will take place, which includes online debates and workshops. This year, UNESCO's World Press Freedom Day conference in the Netherlands has been delayed until October due to COVID-19. In his message, UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres said media has a crucial role in helping people make informed decisions.
Journalists and media workers are crucial to helping us make informed decisions. As the world fights the COVID-19 pandemic, those decisions can make the difference between life and death. On World Press Freedom Day, we call on governments and others to guarantee that journalists can do their jobs throughout the COVID-19 pandemic and beyond. As the pandemic spreads, it has also given rise to a second pandemic of misinformation, from harmful health advice to wild conspiracy theories.
Health authorities in several Arab countries have reported new cases and related deaths due to novel coronavirus. Yemen has reported 3 new cases, 2 in Aden city and 1 in Taiz province, raising the number of infections to 10 with 2 deaths. More in this report. The UN says it fears the virus could be spreading undetected in Yemen, where a 5-year war has shattered health systems and left millions acutely malnourished. Qatar's health ministry said 776 people tested positive for the virus over the past 24 hours, taking the toll to 14,872. Kuwait recorded 3 new fatalities and 242 new cases, raising the total to 4,619. In Lebanon, the health ministry said another person died from the virus, taking the death toll to 25. According to the ministry, 4 new infections were registered, taking the total cases in the country to 733. Bahrain said the virus tally rose to 3,284 after 103 infections were reported. The Gulf state has so far confirmed 8 deaths from the pandemic. Oman registered 36 new infections, bringing the total coronavirus cases to 2,483. India's economy is reeling from the impact of COVID-19 pandemic. Both the garment and tourism sectors are incurring heavy losses, while daily wage earners continue struggling to survive. Let's find out more about India in this report.
The COVID-19 pandemic has had a major impact on the Indian garment sector, with exports coming to a complete stop. Manufacturers, traders and workers have all been hit hard, and warehouses are full of finished product with no demand. People associated with the industry have been left with no income.
The situation is very grave right now because of the coronavirus. All the orders that we have cancelled in today's date, and the order we have in Mumbai that has also been cancelled. I have been thinking about how to get the stock now.
Much like the rest of the world, the Indian tourism sector is also in tatters.
The upcoming season looks like very bleak. The CM has already stated that next season might start only in December. So if it starts in December, I don't think there is hardly anything to be for the tourism season.
Meanwhile, the country's most impoverished citizens are struggling to survive. Migrant workers stranded in big cities when the lockdown was announced are still struggling to reach home. Some groups are trying to cash in on the tragedy using human trafficking techniques.
We have found that 18 people from Maharashtra were traveling to Lucknow and they were found inside the truck. They were being taken in a very insensitive manner. We have shifted them to appropriate facility and sent the vehicle to police station and registered a first information report.
India has reported more than 35,000 cases and 1,147 confirmed deaths from the virus. On Friday, the government announced the lockdown would be extended by another 2 weeks after 4th May.
Middle East state carriers Emirates and Etihad Airways believe that it could take 3 years for air travel demand to return to pre-coronavirus levels. In a video conference, Emirates President Tim Clark and Etihad Chief Executive Tony Douglas discussed the impact of the pandemic on air travel. The two higher-ups said they believed 85% of the world's airlines are at risk of insolvency. They said that without state support, the airlines could go bankrupt before year-end. Both airlines have grounded scheduled passenger flights since last month, but have operated some outbound-only services for foreigners leaving the country. The pandemic has brought international air travel to a virtual halt, and many airlines have warned they may not survive the crisis. Now let's look at the weather from around the globe. This is all for now. For the latest updates, you can follow us on social media at indus.news.